channel, readers. And if you're new here, welcome. This is SpookyNikkiReads, and I am Spooky Nikki. Um, so, for today's video, we are doing a readathon, or I am doing a readathon. So, for this month's readathon, this is a book I've been wanting to read for a little while. So, when I was about 15, I'm pretty sure I was 14 or 15, I got this book because I've always been into the spooky shit. And it was like one of the old pocket sized books like this. Great. Now I can't stick it back in there. Okay. That's what she said. Anyways, I read it when I was 15, and to this day, it's 20 years later. 20 years later. And to this day, I still remember this book. I remember the cover of it. It took me a while to remember the name of it. I knew it was Necro something because it had something to do with a necromancer. And I just remember, like, I don't remember what the actual book was about. All I remember was that it was like an acid trip. It was so weird and so crazy. And it was to do with a necromancer. And I I started reading Stephen King when I was in kindergarten or first grade. I know, not the greatest decision for whoever got me into it, but they did. But I started reading Stephen King and Edgar Allan Poe and Shakespeare when I was in kindergarten and first grade. So I grew up around all of the spooky stuff. And then my dad started me on horror movies when I was 6 years old. All the old best slashers. So I'm used to that. But I remember when I read this book when I was 15 that it was one of the weirdest and just most trippiest books I've ever read. And even though I can't remember the story, I can't remember the characters, and it took me a while to remember the title. I damn sure didn't remember the author because I can't remember names. I'm getting better, but even with all of that, I still remember that it was one of the trippiest books I've ever read. So I went looking for this book because I didn't have it in my collection. I've had to restart all of my possessions like 3 times in my life because crappy things that happened in my life. So I didn't have it in my collection anymore. So I went looking for this book and I found it online. I was going to get the original. My cat is pushing the door open. I was going to go get the original, like, pocket-sized book. And the only one I could find was on eBay, and it looked like it would fall apart before it got here. So instead, because I found the series, it's a whole series, I didn't even know it was a series. I found the whole series on Amazon. Necroscope by Brian Lumley. It's about necromancy and vampires. And this one's even got some art in it. And I think the one I had when I was growing up had a couple pages of art too. But to this day, I'm 35 now. To this day, it is one of the trippiest reads I've ever remembered reading. And I can't remember the story. So I thought it would be really cool if I would do a readathon reading a book for the first time in 20 years to see if it's still one of the trippiest books I've ever read. If I like it, then I am going to start buying the series one by one and reading them and reviewing them on this channel. I have a feeling I'm going to like it, but this book was published in 91. The only reason I remember that is because that's the year my sister was born. So I don't know if everything holds up. I don't know if Brian Lumley is a good guy. I have done no research. My biggest thing with this readathon is I read this book when I was 15, and it was one of the weirdest and trippiest books I've ever had, that I've ever read. And I want to read it again for the first time 20 years later and see what I think. Sort of an experiment. And if I like it, I'll read the series for this channel. So let's do this. Look at the art. This art is what I remembered from the cover. It's a skull with vampire fangs and a tongue. That I remembered this, and I remembered that the title was Necro something because I remember it had something to do with necromancy. But there were some really weird scenes in this book that my 15-year-old self is like, that's kind of sick. But now I've seen way more stuff, so maybe it won't be as sick now. But I have never seen anyone talk about this book or this series on BookTube. So it'll be interesting to see. So I am going to go shower and get into some comfy clothes. My work is done for the day. I'm going to shower and get in some comfy warm clothes and get my spot ready, and we are going to read Necroscope. So let's go get comfy and get ready for a readathon. All right. Okay, I'm back. And I'm in my bed. I got some comfy clothes on. Ignore my bonnet. I have thick curly hair. I need some extra frizz protection because when I start frizzing, it does not look good. But it helps protect the curls too. My cats are on the bed. Well, at least my boys are on the bed. And they are trying to attack my feet under the blankets. Especially Mary, and he's not usually the one that does that. It's usually Pippin. You want to see them? This is Mary. And that's Pippin. And then their sister Eowyn is in the other room because they are scheduled to get their surgeries, and she cannot be around her brothers right now because it wouldn't be safe. So yeah, they're chilling with me on a bed. I got my water. I got my notebook. My reading journal still has not come in the mail because Amazon is being slow as hell with everybody's orders right now, and I don't understand why. So I got my notebook that I've been taking notes of all the books I've read this month. I'm gonna keep doing it until I get my reading journal in the mail. But we're going to start on Brian Lumley's Necroscope. I was thinking, do y'all want me to read the blurb? I'm of course going to read the blurb, or at least like summarize the blurb during the wrap up for January. But do y'all want me to read the blurb of the books that I read during the readathon, or like right before the readathon? I don't know. So, in case you do, I'm going to read the blurb now. And if you don't want me to read the blurb in future readathons, leave a comment down below and let me know, because it all just depends on what y'all want. I'm just winging it here. All right, so I'm going to read the blurb really quick. Again, it's Brian Lumley's Necroscope. It's been more than 20 years since Brian. Nope. Nope, that's not a blurb. Okay, that the first two paragraphs is about Brian Lumley. It's like his agency hyping him up. It's not even a bio or anything or reviews. It's just his agency hyping him up. Okay, the blurb says Harry Coe, Keoghh. Coe. Harry Coe is the man who can talk to the dead, the man for whom every grave willingly gives up its secrets, the one man who knows how to travel effortlessly through time and space via the Mobius continuum. Because of Harry, humanity will survive. Yeah, none of that brought back any memories from reading this. And I read this 20 years ago. I was 15. Oh, and yeah, I have they're like caffeine and aloe eye pads under my eyes because I get dark circles and puffy eyes a lot because I work my ass off. But I'm using my uh, Time to Raise the Dead bookmark. I thought it was fitting. Look at this art, even in the front pages. That's just cool. All right, I'm gonna read a little bit, and then I will see you in the next clip with the update. Okay? Like I said, I'm just winging it. I don't know what you want. So let me know what you want. Good morning. So last night, um, I didn't update before I went to bed because I was too tired. I stayed up until like 1 o'clock reading. These chapters are really long. Um, but I got to page 49 before I called it. I was really trying to finish the chapter, but there were still like 12 more pages of the chapter. Uh, and I had only read the prologue and started chapter 1. So yeah, there's 16 chapters plus a prologue plus an epilogue and like an afterward chapter that tells more about the story after the fact. So I'm counting it as uh, 18 chapters. No, 19 chapters. 16 chapters plus the 3 extra. So 19 chapters. And they're all pretty long. So I need to read 5 chapters a day in order to get this done by sometime Friday so I can edit this video and have it up for y'all for Sunday. So yeah. So my plan is it is 7 o'clock in the morning. So my plan is to finish this chapter and before I start any of my work. And then I have a lot of like video editing to do today. And I had phone calls to make today, but I'm pretty sure most of the businesses in town are going to be closed today because we have at least 5 inches of snow. I took out the trash and I wish I had had snowshoes because I was trudging in the snow. Um, it was cold, but it wasn't super freezing, even though it is freezing temperatures. But uh, it's pouring the snow again. It slowed down a little bit at like 1 o'clock last night when I was going to bed. But it has picked up again and it is pouring the snow. So I'm sure we're going to get another couple inches before it slows down again. So I doubt most of the businesses that I need to call today are going to be open. So while I'm waiting for videos to upload today, I'm going to also be reading whenever I can. Uh, I do have a couple of chapters I need to edit for my work that I didn't get to yesterday because I was just wiped. um, but I'm going to try to do both today. I'm going to try to edit chapters between, while videos are uploading and reading Necromancer uh, whenever videos are uploading. And I'm hoping that I can have all of my work done before like 2 o'clock. And then I can spend the rest of the evening all day reading. Because I really need to read this book for this reading uh, vlog. I'm also reading other books. Y'all know this. I'm reading The Two Towers. I'm reading The Animal, which The Animal wasn't on my list this month. But I was in a mood to read a quickie horror story. So I got it off at Amazon and come to find out that the short story wasn't actually a short story. It was the first chapter of a book. And the author had put the first chapter as a short story on Amazon. And after you read it, then he says, "Oh, by the way, if you're interested, the entire book is available at the link below. This is chapter 1." So I'm like, "Oh, so you roped me into this unwittingly." So now I'm reading The Animal as well. It's good. It's about like a werewolf type of deal. Um, and I got the arc of In the Shadow of the Fall uh, on NetGalley. I finally signed up for NetGalley and I got approved for this arc. So I need to start reading that too. I have like 48 days to read it, but I want to have it done by next week so that, yeah, I want to have all of my reading for the month done by next week, by the end of next week. So when I do the reading wrap up, it can be as accurate as possible. Excuse that. Anyways, I got hot coffee this morning because it was cold out when I went to take out the trash and check the mail and stuff. So I am going to finish reading this chapter before I get into my work. And I will update you as soon as I get this chapter done before I start work, because that way I can give you a little bit of an update on how I'm liking it so far. And I am liking it. there's a couple scenes in it that, as I was reading it, it started coming into my memory. I'm like, oh. Like the one scene, I was like, I know this is messed up, but I know it's about to get worse. I can't remember what happens, but I know it's about to get way worse. And it did. But it's still nowhere near as bad as I've read in the last 20 years. So, um, even though it was weird. It's not weird. It was just gross. Um, it was enjoyable. I don't know. I will explain in the next update. I'm gonna go finish this chapter, and then I will be back. Okay, so if you hear the heater, I'm sorry. Uh, can't really do anything about it. It is going to continue kicking on because it is cold as hell outside. All right, so I finished chapter 1. So now I read the prologue and chapter 1. Also, I got the StoryGraph app. So I've been updating my progress on all of my currently reading books there. So if you would like to buddy read with me, we can also buddy read through StoryGraph. So let me know if you want to buddy read something. But for the first 2 chapters of the book, okay, it's so far just as good as I sort of remember. There have been scenes that I didn't remember until they were happening, and then I couldn't remember exactly what was going to happen, but I knew it was going to get worse, and it did. First, make sure you check your triggers before you read this book. This was published in 91. I don't know when everything was updated last. Even Brian Lumley's website was updated like 2 years ago. But he's on Facebook, so I followed him there. So I don't know when it was last updated, if they put trigger warnings in it or not. I don't know. But there's a lot of gore, a lot of stuff around death, and if I remember correctly, there's a bunch of necrophilia type of stuff, which is something that yeah, there is, because ever since reading this book when I was 15, every time I think of a necromancer, I think of necrophilia. And it's because of this book. And to be a necromancer, you don't have to be a necrophiliac. So the only reason for that to be in my brain is because I read it somewhere, and it's this book. So I am enjoying it so far. It's very much based around Soviet Russia, KGB era. Uh, the torture techniques and stuff from that era. Yeah, so right. So, right now, who is the necromancer? Um, and right now, he is working with Borowitz, which is a Russian secret agency boss. And Dragosani reads the dead to find out their secrets, type of thing. So when you're talking about Russian, Soviet, KGB, espionage, um, having someone that can read the dead secrets would be a very incredibly useful tool. So yeah, that's his place in all of this right now. And because of the stuff that just went down, he just got a promotion to be Borowitz's one of Borowitz's like right hand dudes. Um, instead of the KGB. So as part of the promotion, he is getting a new car and he gets to go on vacation for 3 weeks, while Borowitz is like fixing up his chateau to make it impenetrable type of deal. Um, and I just thought it was funny the last line or two of the chapter. Um, keep in mind, Dragosani is a necromancer. Borowitz asked him, "So, where are you going on your vacation?" He said, "Home." He said, "It must be pretty pleasant there if that's the only place you ever vacation at." And he said, "Not really." He's like, "Why then?" And he said, "I don't know. Something in the soil, I suppose." And he's a necromancer, so hint, hint, wink, wink, something. He's probably about to do something. It's probably not very pleasant. But I'm enjoying it. I no, I never read any of the other books in the series, but so far I'm liking this book and I'm liking the story, and I, as of my opinion right now, I would like to read the rest of the series as well. But we'll see the farther we go into it. But yeah, I finished that chapter. So I need to read 5 chapters later today in order to keep up my progress. So I am going to start my work for the day, and I'm going to read whenever I can, and I will jump back up on here and update you later after all of my work is done and let you know like if I got any reading done, how much, what I'm thinking, and like tell you that my work's done, so I'm going to stay down and read for the rest of the evening type of thing. I will talk to you later after my work is done for the day. Okay. I'll see you in the Uh-oh. Heater just kicked on again, so if you hear it, I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it. But let me start this by saying I think I have a problem. I know we still have 15 days left of January. And I know my goal was to finish reading what books I had already started before coming into January. And then to read No Rings Attached, the audiobook choice for them all, Smiley, The Ark, Necroscope for the readathon, or reading vlog, whatever, and start reading The Return of the King, because I started reading The Two Towers last month. I want to finish it this month and start reading The Return of the King. That was my goal this month. However, I've reached that goal a bit. So I already finished one of the books I came into the new year reading. I finished The New Neighbors. Loved it, by the way. I finished reading No Rings Attached, or listening to No Rings Attached. And I got another audiobook and I've been listening to it because audiobooks are easy. I can listen to it while I'm cooking and cleaning, while I'm doing certain work tasks where I can have background noise. Like, there's so many instances during the day where I can listen to an audiobook while I'm doing something else, so it's just easy. So I went ahead and got another audiobook. That means I added another book to my list. And I already had like 4 on my if I can get to it, that would be great list, right? Well, then I got NetGalley, and I requested like 5 arcs. Not all of them was going to be in January anyways, but one of them came through for January. Technically, I have 48 days to read it. I want to finish it in this month because they gave it to me in this month. So that's just what I want. So I'm reading. Oh, I haven't started it yet. I was supposed to start it today. I never got to it. In the Shadow of the Fall. That was the arc from NetGalley. I also told y'all that I started reading The Animal on Kindle because I thought it was a short story. Come find out it was just the first chapter. So now I'm into that book. I'm still reading The Two Towers. Reading Necroscope. And I just got approved for another arc from a book talker. Well, an author talker. Author talker. But the cover looked amazing, sounded amazing, so I signed up and I was approved. So I just got that arc delivered to my email. And I need to read it soon. So now I am about to sneeze. Excuse me. So right now I am currently in the middle of reading 4 books. No, yeah, reading 4 books, listening to 1, which is still reading. I still believe that's reading, but just to clarify. And that's enough. If I could just finish those 4 before the end of the month in the last 15 days, that would be great. But now I also have 2 arcs that I've signed up for that I need to read. So I'm like, I think I have a problem. Some of these books, of course, I can hold off until next month. If it takes me longer to finish reading them, that's fine. And I would easily be able to tear through all of these books really fast if I didn't have all of the rest of my work and projects and life going on. I don't have that liberty. So yeah. So I have my little list. This is not including creating character arcs. Because this one, if I don't finish it this month, that's fine. I would like to, but this is a craft book. I'm taking massive notes. It's fine. So I didn't include that on the list because it's okay. And I didn't put the audiobook on this list because this is just the ones I'm not listening to. This is the Kindle and the physical copies. And there are 5 of them. And I just moved my schedule so that I'm working more on Saturday than I usually do. Because it was the only way I could work around everything and get everything accomplished that needs to be accomplished. So yeah. So let's just say Saturday evening, all night Saturday until I fall asleep, and all freaking day and night Sunday until I fall asleep. For the rest of the month, I am going to be reading hardcore. But I'm not regretting it. I'm reading some really good books this month. So far, I'm starting out the year as a win. I need to take more allergy medicine. It's the heater pumping all the pollens and dust and stuff through. I didn't get to read anymore while I was working today. I read like a paragraph or 2. That's it. So that's my update. I am going to be updating you again either before I go to sleep or in the morning. Which it will be, I don't know. I'm just winging it here. But the nice thing about the chapters being so long is that when you read a chapter, you can see a fair chunk. So that's a plus. I'm gonna go read now. I'll talk to you in a little while or in the morning. And I need to take my allergy medicine. Hello again. It is morning. I told you last night that I might update before I go to bed or I might update in the morning. It's morning. It's actually afternoon because I slept in when I didn't mean to. But that's what happens when you stay up late reading. So I did get another chapter read in Necroscope. So I did make progress. And now we are going back to one of the characters from the prologue, where there's like a ghost type of specter ghoul in the prologue whose name is Harry, And now in this chapter, it was Harry, but when he was a child in school. Showing how abnormal he was, how much he was getting bullied, and everyone thought he was stupid, but really he's actually incredibly smart and can do the formulas in his head. He just daydreams a lot, and he talks about how his daydreams are weird because it feels like he can't pull himself out of them, like he is sinking into them. So when he daydreams, he doesn't do it on purpose. He just sinks, and he can't come out of it until someone like his best friend like jabs him in the ribs, and the teacher is hollering his name. That's what'll snap him out of it. And he's like, I don't mean to. It's just I was stuck in a daydream, and it happens all the time to the point that everyone just thinks he's like space-headed and dull and stupid, and he's not. So that was pretty much like the whole of the chapter, was showing him as a boy in school and how he like was sneaking to watch his teachers do their thing together so that he knows what to do with the girl he's interested in. So yeah, went from incredibly brutal to now, okay, this is a boy in school and you're going to learn about him for a minute. Okay. And the chapters are so long. That's my biggest hang up, is the chapters are so long. It's taking me almost an hour to read each chapter because they're so long, and each chapter there's so many different things going on that I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any of the important details. So like I told y'all, I'm still waiting on my reading journal to come in the mail. So I'm taking notes in my notebook, and I'm literally like putting a bullet and then like taking like a bit of notes for each chapter, so I remember, okay, this is this character and what we've seen in this chapter, so that when we get to the next chapter and it's something completely different, I'll remember what's happening. Because also, Harry, the Spectre, that was the boy in this chapter, when he was the Spectre in the prologue and talking to Alec, he was saying that he was getting ready to tell him the story about everything that's going on and why the things are about to happen, and give him like insight on like the company that the head of the company is gone, and Alec is worried about the company going down and him not being able to step up in place like he's supposed to, and their competitors and everything else. So Harry was there like getting ready to tell the story before the next chapter happened, and it was completely different people. And there was mention of Germans and Russians in the prologue in that before he went into his story. So then when it went to Borowitz and Dragosani in Germany, and there's Russians and everything else, I was like, okay, this ties in somehow. We don't know how yet, but this ties in somehow. So I'm trying to take notes so I can remember all of the details. Allergies are firing off already this morning. So I am invested and interested in the story still. It's just it's taking so long. And I was sitting there reading last night and almost fell asleep with the book in my lap. And I had to get a snack and switch to a different book for 30 minutes in order to wake myself up enough to come back and finish the last 6 pages of this chapter. And it's not that I'm not interested, because I'm completely interested. It's just it's taking a while, and I don't get it. I mean, I get it, but it's a little irritating. Maybe it's I am a very big mood reader, so maybe that's what it is, where I'm just not in the mood to sit down and read this book in particular. But I feel like I am. I feel like I wish I had like 3 days where I could just sit down and read and not do anything else. And then I would be able to finish this easy. Finish it, uh, film these, edit and upload the video, uh, review this. If I had 3 days where I didn't have to do any other work, it's actually to the point that I'm considering like shifting all of my work so that I can have at least 2 days where I don't have to do anything. Because if you hear this scraping, it's my cat. Give me just a second. Okay. Okay, so Sundays I usually have the full day off, but this video has to go up Sunday. So I do not have time to edit and upload it Sunday. One, YouTube takes a while for the videos to upload. And two, it's going to take a little bit of time for me to edit it. So I need to be able to edit it, have it completely edited and upload it on Saturday. So I would really like to be able to just read for the next 2 days and finish it, because I could absolutely do that if this was my only job for the next 2 days, was to read it and then edit everything and upload everything Saturday and review this Saturday, then it would work. But I have work to do. So I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I'm going to make it work, because that's what I do. I make things work. I make things happen. So I'm going to make it happen. Yeah. So I am now going to start my work for the day, get it done as fast as I can, and then I'm going to read. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I will update you later after I start reading again. Okay. Hello. Let's talk about Necroscope. Okay, so I am tired. I haven't updated you in like a day and a half. I'm sorry for that. However, I did say I would make it work. So what I did was I did as much of my Thursday and Friday and Saturday work on Thursday. And then Friday, I woke up Friday morning and I read Necroscope until I finished it. I didn't go to bed until 8:30 this morning. Today's Saturday morning. It's after 1 p.m. I didn't go to bed until 8:30 this morning because it took me that long to read it. I read this. I finished it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so first, I need to talk about my experience reading it 15 years later. Well, no, my experience reading it 20 years later. I first read Necroscope when I was 15. And I hadn't read it again until now, until this week. And it's been 20 years. So my vague memory of this book was just that it had something to do with necromancy and vampires. Vampires is always a win for me. It's always a yes, auto buy, take my money. And the feeling I got from necromancy, just the subject of necromancy, was very visceral. It was. I knew that there had to have been some sort of like necrophilia or something um, bodily involved with this book because of how because of my visceral reaction to necromancy ever since. Um, Even in Lord of the Rings, there's the necromancer they call the necromancer. Um, and I would just immediately be like, ugh, okay. Even though necromancy doesn't necessarily mean necrophilia, for some reason I connected a grotesque sexual act to necromancy. And now I know why. And no, it had nothing to do with necrophilia. Um, Also, before you read this book, please check triggers. This came out in '91, so honestly, I don't know if there's any triggers out there like put somewhere. There definitely isn't on the back. So let me go ahead and list triggers for you. Sodomize, uh, bodily torture, um, gore. There is mention of the Holocaust and stuff, but nothing on page. It's just like, yeah, that happened a few years ago, type of thing. Um, Physically and grotesque things happening to a corpse. Not necrophilia. Necrophilia was not in there. But things did happen. Um, yeah, I think it's all the triggers. Um, Now, I could only remember certain scenes of this book, and it only happened when the scene came up. That I was like, oh yeah. One of the very first like grotesque scenes, I was like, this is bad, but it's about to get worse. I don't know what it is, but I know it's about to get worse. And it did. Um, so there was a few scenes like that where I was like, I remember this. I don't remember what happens, but I remember this. Um, Now, I think a big part of why this book, reading it when I was 15, the memory of it is so vague, and I thought it was very like acid trippy, like haze, is because I don't think I was ready for it when I was 15. Now, I grew up, as I told y'all, I grew up starting in kindergarten, first grade, reading Poe and King and Shakespeare. My dad started me on slashers when I was 5 and 6 years old. My favorite show growing up was Tales of the Crypt. Like, I very early on got into the gore and the horror and different things. And also because I read Shakespeare and Stephen King and Edgar Allan Poe, my uh, intellectual expansion was a little bit more advanced than my peers. I actually got bullied for it. Um, my vocabulary was more advanced. I used big words a lot when I was in elementary school, and a lot of people would bully me and told me that I was doing it to make them feel stupid. So I kind of dumbed myself down so I wouldn't make people feel bad. But I still have it. It's just I very rarely use eloquent language like that simply because it makes other people uncomfortable. And I am making a active point to change that now. Especially in the last year or so, I realized that changing part of who I am because it makes other people uncomfortable isn't right. So I am opening that layer of myself. Saying that, I don't think that everything in Necroscope I was ready for. Um, because there's time traveling in it as well. And so I don't think my brain was able to completely comprehend and wrap around it and understand exactly the concept, and being able to write something like time travel is incredibly difficult to be able to write it and it be clear and understood and comprehended. Um, so I don't think that my mind at 15 was able to completely comprehend it all. Also, there's multiple POVs, and I don't think I was very familiar with that writing style or writing structure when I was that young. Um, Especially because there are a lot of writing structural things in Necroscope that are different now. Now, if you have different POVs, they all get a different chapter. And here it starts out that way, but then as soon as it gets close to the climax and it starts building up speed, everyone's POV is in the same chapter. It's just boom, 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 like every 4 or 5 paragraphs, another POV, which is fine, but it is easier for the reader to not be so abruptly jarred out of the story if you split those into different chapters, which we do now. Um, but also the way he wrote this book, it was every about 12 to 20 pages was another. He formatted and structured this book very much like some of the writers of that age. This was published in 91. And the only reason I remember 91 is that with my sister's birth year. Where they had longer chapters and every chapter was about the same length. When I write books, I end the chapter when I feel like the scene should end, like movie scenes, how it could go on for a little bit, but then it switches to a different scene or a different perspective or whatever. That's how I format my books. And every time there's a new POV, new chapter, even if it's only one paragraph long chapter, it's a new chapter so that the switch between POVs isn't so jarring and brings the reader out of the story. And that's something that we are used to doing now, but not so much in 91. So there are certain structural things like that I think was very jarring when I was 15 that I hadn't experienced, so I didn't exactly comprehend it all. Also, between the different POVs, there is also timeline difference. I wasn't familiar with that when I was 15 either. Now I absolutely love when different timelines converge in a story. And so now my brain is much easier, it is much easier for my brain to comprehend now than it was when I was 15, the different timelines and different POVs. So I think when I was 15, I just wasn't ready for this book. Um, and some would argue for other reasons because it is horror and it's grotesque and there's sodomizing and stuff in here that a 15-year-old shouldn't be reading it. However, I started Stephen King and Edgar Allan Poe and Shakespeare when I was in kindergarten. That stuff never has fazed me, and it's actually expanded my reading repertoire. And I appreciate the fact that someone allowed me to read these books when I was so young because it showed me an expansive world, many expansive worlds where my reading was not sheltered. And I completely appreciate that. And I'm so grateful for that. Now, saying that, that was how it was when I was 15. And now I understand why I didn't necessarily remember a lot of stuff. One of the reasons is because of his writing style. I keep wanting to say it's very stylized, but that doesn't seem like the right word. Um, but like Stephen King, his writing is very eloquent and stylized, where it's very dense. Tolkien is the same way; it's very dense. This is the same way. Brian Lumley's writing style is very dense, it's very eloquent and melodic. And so if you don't like King and you don't like Tolkien simply because that writing style, you can't comprehend it, you can't get into it because it's too much, this series isn't for you because that's how his writing style is. I personally absolutely love it, partly because I grew up reading books from authors that did that. I love the different descriptive capabilities and how someone can turn a phrase and turn a sentence and in one sentence make you sink into the setting, sink into the character. So many different things. I love that writing style. And I think that's one of the reasons that I am absolutely giving Necroscope 5 out of 5 stars. Um, as an adult now, 20 years later, I I took extensive notes because I plan to read the series now. Um, let me check. Um, there's 7 books in the Necroscope series. He's also got several other series, well, a trilogy and a Titus Crow series. other books and other short stories, I really want to read the rest of his writing and the rest of his work. Um, but first, I'm absolutely going to read the other 6 books of the Necroscope series. Um, Actually, while this video is uploading to YouTube, I am going to add all of the books to my Amazon wish list. That's how I'm keeping track of the books on my to buy list. um, I don't know when I will be able to buy the next book, because I don't have very much of a reading budget or book budget. But I'm thinking maybe once every 2 months, I will buy the next book of the series, and I will. It'll be an ongoing series on this channel where I am reading this series, and then we'll go through a different series after that. So a little bit of a blurb, I guess, is needed. So Alec is part of a secret branch of the government type of thing in Britain. And his boss, he's the right hand man, his boss just died. And Alec has the gift of being able to see into the future. He doesn't control it, sometimes it just hits him, and usually by prophetic dreams. And one of which is of Harry. And he ends up going to his boss's office while everything's getting wrapped up from his death, and he has to get ready to go see like the superiors and show that he is capable of taking over this branch. And so he's trying to get information, and he finds Harry's file, and in his dream he said the name, and he showed the file to across the room. And in real life, a specter of Harry appears. Harry starts telling him a story, saying that when all of this is done and you understand, you won't worry about this branch anymore. And maybe one day I'll even be your boss. And he's like, how can a ghost be my boss? He's like, I'm not a ghost, but you'll understand soon. And he starts telling him the story. So the story follows 2 timelines. Harry's timeline. Harry is gifted as well. Most of the people in this, well, a lot of the people in the story are gifted. They're called ESPs because they have some sort of ESP gift. His is he can talk to the dead. His mother and his grandmother had a psychic ability that carried down, but no one knew that it was an ESP. Everybody thought it was like, oh, they're psychics. But no, really. And they never expanded their power as much as Harry does. He gets very strong with his power and very gifted. And the whole concept behind it is if you could talk to Einstein, Einstein's dead, but what if the only person in the world that can talk to the dead could go and talk to Einstein? And Einstein has not been in his grave quiet all of these centuries and years. He's been there still working formulas and still coming up with theories and all of the things. So he can teach Harry all of these things that he never got to do in his life, that he's continuing his research and his study. What if Harry could go talk to Plato or Socrates, Marcus Aurelius, anyone of great stature, his stature in the world before they passed away. And then Harry is the only person in the world who can talk to the dead. And the dead love and honor him because he comes like a light in the darkness. They are alone and everything is quiet except for their own musings. And he can come and talk to them and he respects them and he just wants to learn and hear their stories. So it follows Harry's timeline. But it also follows Dragosani, Boris Dragosani. Um, when he was little, there is a group of hills that form like a cross, and on those hills, the forest and the grass, everything is overgrown. It's very eerie. No one goes around the place because they say it's freaking weird. Even the animals don't want to go around there. Well, not Harry, Boris Dragosani was always drawn to that area. So he would go sneak off as a boy and he'd go play and he'd go run around in a box and go riding down the hill. And one day he did that and he fell into a tomb that was hidden in the formation of hills. And the tomb is that of a vampire, an ancient vampire who, instead of being beheaded and killed centuries ago, he was made to stay undead and to suffer in silence and alone for all of eternity. But Dragosani finds him and he talks to him. And eventually, he tells Dragosani, like, when you're a man and you've grown, you and I will take over and rule the world. You get everything you ever wanted, but you don't have strength yet. But for now, I'll give you a gift. And he gave him the gift of necromancy. So, which absolutely terrified the boy because he was little at the time. But he ends up working for the ESP branch in Moscow. And Moscow's people aren't nice. They are brutal. And his necromancy skills is, it doesn't matter how long the corpse has been dead, he will destroy the body with his own hands to make the body tell its secrets. An espionage unit in Russia, that would be an incredible talent to have under your control. So that's where Dragosani is. He is part of the SB unit and he is revealing all the secrets of the people they killed and that they find dead, secrets for other governments and everything else. And in other parts, in the ESB units in Britain, in Russia, everywhere. But those two are the ones that are like the most advanced at the time. They have other ESPs. There's telepaths. There's people with the evil eye. There's people who just know where the nuclear atomic weapons are, so they can pinpoint where every single one of them are in the world. Another skill that a country's government would definitely want to have, right? So it minds and how they merge and flow together in ways that I was even shocked. The way Brian Lumley has structured and pieced together this book is brilliant. But eventually, Dragosani becomes a vampire, or vampires, or the Winfiri. They're more like a parasite, but instead of eating away at you, they become like your twin that lives inside you, and you both grow and strength and everything together. Um, so, without consent, um, the old vampire in the ground, the thing in the ground, um, impregnates Dragosani with a vampire. Um, it, there's a lot of things going on. Uh, there's a reason why Vlad was called the Impaler. So the thing in the ground says. Um, that's another scene entirely and completely messed me up for a minute. Um, but it's following their timelines and the Russians against the Britons and the ESB units and trying to take down the other one so they can reign superior type of thing. And all the while, Harry didn't know none of this stuff was going on. He was living his own life until eventually the Britain ESB branch superior, the boss, Alex's boss, comes to him and is like, hey, um, you're not in trouble or anything, but you're not the only one out there with gifts, and I found you, so they'll find you too, and we would really like to work with you. And a whole lot of things happen, like a shit ton of things happen in this book. My extensive notes. But another reason I took my extensive notes is so that when I am reading this series, each book, I'm going to take extensive bullet point notes. And then when I get the next book, I'm getting ready to read the next book. Instead of reading the last book or the last several books to refresh myself, I'm just going to read my notes. And then I can go into the next book. So yeah, I took pretty extensive notes because of that. For the first time ever, actually. But I think that's another reason that I wasn't ready for it was 15 was because I didn't take notes. So there was a lot of things I missed, like a lot. Um, I was keeping track of everything in my notes this time because different POVs, different timelines. There was stuff happening in Britain, stuff happening in England, England is in Britain. You know what I mean. Um, stuff happening in Russia, stuff happening in uh, Wallach, Wallach, stuff happening all over the place. And so I just took extensive notes. I absolutely love this book. Um, vampires have always been a huge like auto read thing for me, and not because of Twilight. Every time I ever say I love vampires, everybody's like, "Oh, you're a Twilight girl, aren't you?" Twilight didn't come out until I was in like high school, and I didn't even watch it or read it until I was an adult. No, my first obsession with vampires was Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice when I was in elementary school. I had the book, I had the original movie, I had the audiobook on cassette tape in my little like Walkman. Yeah, that was my first obsession with vampires. and then of course Dracula and Vlad the Impaler and I always fuck that up. Uh, and then when I was in middle school, Queen of the Damned, Lestat, the human that he ends up changing, and Queen of the Damned, all three of them, just yes. Um, Twilight didn't come till after all that, and I was an adult, and okay, so yeah, I like the sexual appeal of Lestat, but I like my vampires to scare the hell out of you and not sparkle like diamonds. Sorry, no. However, I do like some of the writing choices she made, but no. I was into Twilight for the not for the vamps, but for the werewolves. Uh, but I've had an obsession with vampires since I was in elementary school, and there there have been very few cases in my life where I have read a book that has vampires in it that was to a certain level. Anne Rice was one of them. Um, Dracula was one of them. Uh, Necroscope is definitely one of them. And there's another series, I'll pop up a picture up here somewhere, by Becca C. Smith and Henry Ford. They're both indie authors and friends of mine. And they wrote a series, it's like Dark Knights or something. I can't remember the series name. But it's about vampires and angels. And it is just brilliant on so many levels. And the grotesque terrifying nature of vampires that you can find in uh, Dracula and Nosferatu and Interview with the Vampire and Necroscope you can find in their series. It's just a certain level of vamp that I am absolutely enthralled by. And the writing style is absolutely brilliant. Like they are I absolutely put it. I know a lot of people love Anne Rice, but I put Brian Lumley and uh, Legacy Smith and Henry Ford up there with Anne Rice as far as vamps. Yes, fuck yes. It's just so brilliantly structured and depicted. I absolutely love it. If you haven't checked out that series yet, absolutely go check it out if you're into vamps at all. It's vamps, it's angels. There's also like historical things in it from like Egypt and stuff. If you like historical little snippets like that, I'm a sucker for Egypt. Uh, there's plenty of that in there too, but check your triggers. These vamps and all of these series, they're not your uh, oh, I'm pretty and I want to suck your blood type of vamps. No, they're morbid and they're grotesque and it's visceral and it's horrifying and I love it. So yeah, um, I am giving Necroscope by Brian Lumley 5 out of 5 stars. I am absolutely reading the rest of the series. I want to read the rest of his works. This is the only book by Brian Lumley I've ever read, and I am so glad that this story, in its very vague way, stuck in my head for 20 years, so that I can re-experience it for almost pretty much like the first time 20 years later. I am so thankful that it was stuck in my head like that because this has become one of my absolute favorite reads. of all time. And I mean that completely. I am absolutely reading the rest of the series. There are parts of this that it's going to affect my writing in the future and my books, and I am just excited. It's given me so many ideas, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. Um, there was even a moment in uh, okay, so there's a prologue, and then there's 16 chapters, and then there's like an afterword, and there's like a afterword or whatever. And then there's also like intermissions, like 3 intermission chapters in between. They are super short. They're like a page and a half tops. Um, and the intermissions is Alec sitting there writing notes of the story Harry is telling him, and his hand cramps up. He's like, "Wait, I gotta pause. Hold on." And they talk for a minute, and then they go back to the story. So it's kind of like a great break to bring you back into the fact that, oh yeah, all of this is being told to Alec. But it's absolutely brilliant. All of it is absolutely brilliant. I love it. I can't wait to read uh, more from Brian Lumley. Necroscope, one of my favorite reads ever now. Um, absolutely love it. And in the beginning, there's like a whole chapter's worth of him explaining like where his love of horror came from and stuff. And we have so many similarities in that. He mentions Tales of the Crypt and Goosebumps and old Pulp Fiction books. That's something I love about horror, and something that now there are so many horror books out there that when you look at the cover, you don't know it's horror. And I hate that. I want to look at a book and be like, that's horror and it's going to be creepy. I want it. I like the old Pulp Fiction horror books. I like the old trippy books. I freaking loved it. And that's why I create my covers the way I do. But there was so many similarities between our backgrounds in falling in love with horror that I thought was really cool. But yeah, I am going to end that there. Thank you for watching this reading vlog and experiencing this with me. I am so glad I chose to read this book. Yeah, I will see you next week on Sunday for my January reading wrap up. So I'll see you then. Bye.